Hello, thank you for joining this month's Connect with Control M session. My name is Sean Ross, and I'm a technical support analyst for the Control M team at BMC. Today, we will be providing scheduling tips for scenarios you may encounter as a scheduler. Our panelists for today are Andrew Taylor and Rafi Yurjan. We recommend going to full screen mode during this presentation by pressing the full screen button. Please note that this presentation is available via the Files pod at the bottom of your screen. For any questions you may have during the presentation, please post them in the Q&A pod. We will be addressing your questions at the end of this session. This is our agenda for today's webinar. We'll start with our demos and then briefly summarize what we showed. We'll show some resources that you will find useful regarding today's topic. Then we'll move to the live Q&A session. There are situations where we are needed to run jobs in our environment that complete a redundant task. These times can be when we have batch operations that need to occur on a continuous basis. For example, your organization needs to run a custom script at the top of the hour, or you have a job to check memory allocation every 30 minutes while a high load process is occurring on the environment. For these instances, we would create a cyclic job. However, what happens when a cyclic job fails on one of its iterations? In this example, I will go over what happens when a failure occurs and how to rerun this job. Let's go ahead and look at a cyclic job that I've already created. As you can see, this is a cyclic job that's going to rerun every hour, scheduled for every day. I purposely place arbitrary command in order for the job to fail. There are no actions or prerequisites. Let's go ahead and run this job and see what happens. We'll go ahead and take a look at the log. And as you can see, the number of failures is set to 1. It indicates a job failed. And the job is currently in a wait to rerun status. Now let's see the correct way on how one would rerun a cyclic job immediately upon a job's failure. In this workspace, I have defined 2 jobs. The first job is the original cyclic job. We have the arbitrary command. We have cyclic checked, run every hour, every day on the schedule. But what I have added to this job is an undo action when the job ends not okay. When the job ends not okay, we're going to order the second job that you've seen in the folder. This job name is Rerun. Let's take a look at this job. Now what I've done is instead of putting the arbitrary command to force a job to fail, I went ahead and added a command that actually works, just so you can see a successful run. I made sure to add manual order to the scheduling. That indicates that this job will not be ordered on any time, only when the failed cyclic job calls it. Let's go ahead and see what it looks like when I run this job. So on this job, we still have the failure. However, we have the job rerun forced due to its failure. And as you can see, this job ran successfully afterwards. Now, I do want to note that in this cyclic job, you do have the option to rerun the job. However, if this option is selected, the next rerun of the job will still fall under the scheduling rules of the cyclic job, meaning that if this job fails, the next rerun will still happen in 1 hour. Let's take a look at the next scheduling scenario we will be reviewing. I would like to present a scenario where you are aware of how long a job should run, or possibly how much time you would like to allocate to the job before being alerted that the job is still in its run state. Maybe you have a successor job that is time sensitive. As an example, say you have a query you're running in a database once a week using Control M. This query typically runs for 2 to 4 minutes based on some arbitrary amount of newly added data to your database throughout the week. In this case, you can add an option to this job to alert you if the job runs over 10 minutes to indicate there may be some sort of issue or anomaly with the underlying job. I will proceed to set this job up in my environment. In this workspace, I have the job defined. Let's go ahead and look at the properties. Here I've set up a command with a 6-minute sleep time. What I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and send a notification if the job runs longer than 1 minute. To set up this notification, we want to go to the Actions tab. We want to go to the Notifications before job completion. We want to go ahead and select when job execution time is greater than 1 minute. We're going to go ahead and send this to the alerts window destination. Going to go ahead and put a message in here, and let's just go ahead and make the urgency very urgent. I'll go ahead and save the changes. And here's what I'll do. I'll go ahead and run this job. Let's switch over to the monitoring domain and take a look at the job. Now, as you can see, the job is currently running. Let's move back to the planning domain and check out the job. There are other notification options available. Let's go ahead and take a look at these. You can select a notification when a job is not submitted by a certain time, when a job is not finished by a certain time, or get a notification when a job is set to rerun. Now let's go back and take a look at the alerts. Going to monitoring and alerts. As you can see here, the alert was generated because the job ran over a minute. This is how you would set up job notifications in an event that a job ran too long, has not started at a specific time, has not ended at a specific time, or the job reran. Let's take a look at the next demo. In this scenario, I would like to go over how you can run a job which has a prerequisite job which may not run prior to the day you need the successor job to run. This can be a scenario where you have a prerequisite job which runs Monday through Thursday only, and a successor job which should run Monday through Friday. In this case, the successor job would not execute on Friday since the prerequisite job is not scheduled to run on Friday. I will go over 3 solutions you can use to run your successor job when your prerequisite job is not scheduled to run. In this example, I will be using a dummy job to create the conditions for the successor job to run. Let's take a look at the job definitions. Here I have the prerequisite job. Let's look at the properties. This prerequisite job is scheduled to run weekdays, Monday through Wednesday.
Now, if we look at the actions,
this prerequisite job also creates the out conditions in order for the successor job to run. Taking a look at the successor job, we see the scheduling is weekdays Monday through Friday.
Looking at prerequisites,
in the end conditions,
we see the condition needed to successfully kick this job off.
In this instance, the successor job will not run as today is Thursday. In order to solve this issue, I've created a dummy job. This dummy job will run Thursday and Friday, which are the days that the prerequisite job will not run.
Looking at out conditions,
the dummy job will create the condition needed for the successor job to run.
Let's order this folder and see what happens. When ordering, make sure Ignore Scheduling Criteria is not checked. If it is, this will order all jobs regardless of the scheduling you've set. So let's order this and move to the monitoring domain to see how this works. Let's expand these. As you can see, the prerequisite job did not run as today is Thursday. However, the dummy job did run. If we take a look at the logs, you can see that the condition was created in order for the successor job to run. We can take a look at the job log and see the time that this job was successfully ran.
Let's take a look at another example.
We'll go to Planning and we'll go to the next workspace.
Here I have the same two jobs. Let's go ahead and take a look. I have the prerequisite job scheduled for Monday through Wednesday.
We'll close this out and move to the successor job.
And the successor job scheduled Monday through Friday. So again, in this instance, Thursday and Friday, the successor job will not run. Now here's what's changed.
To create the needed conditions, we're going to use a utility called CTML DNRS.
The CTML DNRS utility creates and loads the manual conditions file. This file contains prerequisite conditions that are required by jobs in the active jobs database, but will not be added to the conditions table without manual intervention. These conditions fall into two categories. Conditions that are never added automatically by scheduled jobs because manual confirmation is always desired, or conditions that are normally added automatically by scheduled jobs, but the job that add them are not scheduled for that day.
In this case, we will be using this for the latter option. Let's review the scheduling for the two new jobs.
Now, as you can see, I've scheduled this out for Thursday and Friday.
Let's look at the actual command being ran. The CTML DNRS, with the argument provided here, will create the manual conditions file and will automatically add the end condition needed for the successor job to run. Let's take a look at the other job. Go ahead and go to Properties. Now this CTML DNRS command will load the prerequisite conditions from the manual conditions file to the resource table. And the scheduling for this job is also Thursday and Friday. Let's go ahead and run this job and see what happens. Again, we want to make sure we do not ignore scheduling criteria, or all the jobs will order, regardless of the scheduling. So let's go move to monitoring. Here we have the previous jobs ran, the dummy job, and the first successor. And now here's the new setup. we have the CTML DNRS jobs and the successor job ran successfully because the conditions were added with the utility. Let's go back to the planning domain and look at our final example. I'll go ahead and select this final workspace, and here's our final example. Now, looking at the properties of the first job, we see the same thing. The prerequisite has Monday through Wednesday scheduled. Also in the actions, we have the out condition needed to create the condition for the successor job. Looking at the successor job scheduling, this is set for Monday through Friday. Now moving to the properties of the folder, if you notice, this is now a smart folder. And checking out the prerequisites, we have adjust conditions set to yes. When adjust conditions are set to yes, prerequisite conditions normally set by predecessor jobs are ignored. Now, let's proceed to run this job and see what happens. Ignore scheduling criteria is not checked. Order. And let's move to the monitoring domain. As you can see, the successor job ran successfully without the need for the predecessor job. Let's go back to the slides. Here is a summary of what we demonstrated today. We showed how to rerun a Cyclic job immediately after it fails, then configured a job to send an alert when it runs too long. Next, we showed how to run jobs when the predecessor job will not run that day and ended with using the CTML DNRS utility to manually add a condition. Here are some resources you can use regarding today's demonstration. The first is an article that talks about rerunning failed Cyclic jobs. The next three are from our documentation, which discuss CTML DNRS utility, conditions, and job actions. Thank you for attending this presentation. We hope the information provided is helpful as you schedule jobs and folders. If you are interested in learning more about control and scheduling, follow the links provided in the slide and in the links section. We would like to encourage you to provide your feedback on the webinar in the feedback tab. Please let us know what you thought about the presentation, any topics you may want covered in the future, or any comments and suggestions you may have. You may follow us on social media platforms via Facebook and Twitter. Past BMC webinars can be viewed on BMC Software Control M channel on YouTube. Today's webinar will be posted in a couple of days. We will now proceed with the Q&A session.